So Dr. Anupriya is a clinical psychologist. She received her master's degree in psychosocial clinical studies from Ambedkar University and MPhil in clinical psychology from Amity University. And she has worked with Perfect Mind, Delhi Psychiatrist Center, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Hospital, and is currently practicing at Max Hospitals. And she's going to tell us, she's going to dig deeper into this psychology of dealing with sugar.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Anjali. So I know that sugar is something that is inescapable also. And some of the things that we need to think about is that perhaps what is an excess of sugar? When are we using sugar when we don't need to? And what is sometimes an okay amount of sugar also, right? So some of the things to keep in mind is, or actually just maybe think about, is that do you sometimes feel tired most of the times, or do you feel like you have trouble concentrating? Sometimes do you feel that, whenever you're stressed, you're constantly reaching out for sugar, or any kind of negative emotions that you're feeling? So the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, let's eat something good. Say if you are unable to get or have access to sugar for a day or two, does it ever feel like you're getting irritable, or does it feel like you're getting short with people around you? Any headaches, any body aches? Sometimes what happens is that we've had a dessert or we've had something sugary, then before we're able to finish that, we start thinking, ki, Acha, now what is there for dinner? What dessert can we have for dinner? So that sort of planning in terms of our sugar treats start, right? Sometimes we may also hide, क्योंकि घर पे it's possible that people, your family might be cautioning you about the sugar use or the amount of sugar that you're having. So sometimes we hide it, or we feel a little embarrassed, or we don't eat in front of people. Yeah, we eat outside and then we come home. And sometimes even when, we promise ourselves, okay, we've had too much now, this is not going to happen again. It feels like it is not in our control, right? Say we go out for a meal with a friend. So we guiltily look at each other and then we say, okay, will you have a dessert? Then the friend says, yeah, if you have some, then I'll have some, which is never a good idea, right? And whenever, of course, we're feeling very emotional or overwhelmed, it does often, especially I think for women when they're going through their menstrual cycles, it feels like, okay, I want to have something chocolatey, I'm craving something very sweet. But that's a very, very short span of time that usually helps. Now, these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind, which are like orange flags that maybe the sugar consumption is a bit much. Where are you keeping a stash of sugar at home? Are you feeling any irritability without sugar? When you wake up in the morning with breakfast, does it ever feel like it's the first thing that I have to have, right? Does it feel that you have difficulty stopping or craving for something sweet? Like we said, hiding sweets, ordering dessert, even when we're full. Like we know we're stuffed, there's no place. But like people say कि dessert के लिए जगह नहीं चाहिए होती है, which is very problematic sometimes, right? Um, Moving on, like we've discussed, another thing that is a problem sometimes is our inability to say no. Let's say we decide that, okay, we're not going to have, or we'll just have this much dessert in a week or sugar in a week. When we go to someone's house, they will be like, Are koi baat nahi, just have one, have a little. So our inability to say no, like Dr. Anjali was also saying, that sugar actually lights up the same reward pathway that any other addictive substance sometimes lights up, right? It's the reward pathway, which is why it makes you feel really good. So your receptors are also used to a certain amount of sugar. So if you have a little bit of that mithai, it's not going to stop there. It's a slippery slope. So you will end up having a lot more. And then, of course, when you come home, there'll be the whole cycle of, okay, I couldn't stick to what I had decided. Sometimes, and this may happen when you are consuming sugar very regularly, um, when you're not able to consume it, you may feel some sort of craving, like we were talking about, some bodily difficulty. Sometimes cravings can also, sugar craving can be associated with the place, right? So say you're crossing a mithai shop where you would usually either buy some dessert or some cheesecake. So every time you cross that restaurant, your mind will light up and say, oh, I'm feeling the craving to have that. So that is something, those are external cravings. Sometimes internal cravings can look like boredom, or it can look like any kind of emotional, overly emotional feelings that might trigger that internal craving to get something. Sometimes when your body is used to a certain amount of sugar and you're not getting it, you will feel that withdrawal in your body. So you will feel that discomfort, you will feel that irritation, just like we sometimes feel it with coffee as well. With sugar or with any kind of other addictive substance, what also happens is that over time you will see that you have developed a tolerance. So initially, maybe it would feel great if I had a bite of some dessert, but that wouldn't be enough. Over time, you will feel like I need to have more and more of that dessert or more and more of the sugar to feel the same amount of rush or to feel better. So your tolerance to the amount of sugar that your body can deal with is also increasing. Now, it is very important to understand that a lot of times sugar becomes a substitute for a lot of things, right? So sometimes, like Dr. Anjali was also saying, that we have given sugar to children as rewards, right? And it is possible that we have also been given rewards in terms of sugar. So it's important to be mindful and think about, where did it start? Like, did I always have the sugar cravings? Or was there ever a point of time when sugar was okay? I would have it on and off, but it didn't become such a preoccupation in my life, right? Or am I like Dr. Anjali was also saying, that there is so much sugar in all food products, right? So mindful eating then becomes very difficult. Like I was saying that I love Kaju Katli, but I've never thought about the fact that yes, it is actually 50% sugar. And how problematic is that for my body? Daily stressors. So, did your sugar, the need to feel better when you're consuming sugar, did it ever start when daily stressors started building up? Is it working for you as a distraction? Where all, in what all situations does it make you feel good? These are all a few pointers, which is it thinking around your consumption becomes important. Now, sometimes we see that sugar is a substitute for feed, either nourishment that your body is lacking, which can be fulfilled with other healthy foods. If you suddenly lose weight, it triggers a sugar craving. If there's inadequate nutrition, our emotional needs is one of the major reasons why we fall back as coping mechanisms on something nice and sweet, right? Any stress, sadness, feelings of loneliness, frustration can all add to the craving. One of the few vulnerabilities can be exhaustion. And these days, it is, of course, like we're all working all the time. Even when we're home, we tend to bring work home. So our phones are always like the WhatsApp is always on. So you're never switched off. So you're always waiting for, anticipating. Somebody will ping, somebody will not. You're here, you're at work, you're at home. So you're all over the place. And that is everyone's story. So sugar craving it makes you more vulnerable to crave when you're tired, when you don't have time for some rest, something which is playful, something which is creative, when you feel like, oh my God, there aren't enough hours of the day and no one's getting work done, when you're constantly feeling that anxiety in the pit of your stomach, sometimes that can lead to some sort of acid reflux. Um, a lot of times it feels like, oh my God, if I don't do it, then it's never going to get done. So what happens is that your body starts releasing cortisol, which is also stress hormone, and ultimately that crash can lead to more sugar cravings. Sometimes, like we discussed, negative emotions can, of course, lead to cravings where if you have a monotonous work schedule, you're always turning to comfort food because you're feeling low, or late at night when it feels like, okay, I'm watching a Netflix show, let's snack on something. So, whether or not we're hungry, right, we'll go and eat it. If we're under eating, that also sometimes makes you more vulnerable to crave. or feeling stuck in life, if there are conflicts in life. So basically, point is that, see, sugar becomes a coping mechanism. So it is important for us to think, what is it that it is helping us cope with? And is there a better way for that conflict to be resolved, or better coping mechanisms, so that I don't have to fall back on comfort sugary foods? Now, one way to, like, of course, when we start doing it, you self-monitoring, like we said, we have to start with to identify triggers, like where all internal, external triggers, cognitive restructuring, which we'll come to in a bit, coping skills. So we need to see what is it that I'm lacking, where, for example, if stress at work is something which ultimately makes me come home and I'm starved when I come home, carry a little snack from home, because that office is also packaged food, right? So that you're not starving when you come home. Or if there's stress at work, is there a way to better manage it? Do we need to be more assertive at work? Do we need to be a little more less sensitive to, or take it a little less personally? So these are all changes that we need to bring about in our day to day, so that we're able to see where we need the coping skills. Stimulus control mostly will be in terms of what we don't have at home. For starters, we can't have. So ideally, if I know that some things, some sugary things I will fall back on, try to not have them at home. That's one of the things that we can start with. Then have smaller goal settings. Like I know that some of you, I think, tried it in April. So have these smaller goal settings that, okay, I'm going to try this in this month or this week, or this is my weekly goal. And of course, it is never a 0 or 100. That's not how it works, right? Sometimes it may feel like, acha, I tried, I did it great for 4 days, and then the fifth day, I did something, I ate, I cracked. But that's okay. That does not mean कि 4 दिन की मेहनत is not valid. Absolutely not. So that's sort of all or nothing reasoning is also something we need to counter. Mindful eating and graded exposure to sugar. Like once we're able to sort of control it, then slowly bringing back whatever little we can in our daily meals. So this is something which is very important, I think. So the way that we're behaving or feeling is often influenced by some fallacies in our mind. And these are errors, they're called cognitive errors, and they happen with everybody. Everybody has them, right? So some of these errors that we may feel in terms of sugar is all or nothing. Like I was just saying, black or white, that if I break, that I either consume it excessively or I completely avoid it. And any failure, so there's no gray area. Any failure can feel like I've gone to one extreme, or sometimes overgeneralization, that we say that like if I'm able to, in one instance of any sugary food that I couldn't control, means that all progress is lost, or that I lack self-control. Sometimes we also tend to look at only negative aspects of consumption, that maybe we have been able to reduce intake. For example, our goal was to stop it altogether, right? But we've been able to reduce intake, but that doesn't, we can't see that. So for us, it always feels like कि पर वो goal तो reach नहीं हुआ, right? So we're only filtering and looking at the negatives. Sometimes when this happens a lot, where you feel that your emotions reflect facts, right? So a lot of times when you're feeling low, your mind may go into this loop of, oh, you're not good enough, you couldn't do this, you haven't been able to achieve this, you have disappointed this person. And those are all thoughts. So it is very important to remember that thoughts are not facts. Thoughts will always make you feel a certain way, but just because you're feeling that way doesn't mean that it is a fact, right? But if I believe that at that point, immediately I feel worse and more my tendency to then go towards some sugary item to cope with how I'm feeling. Sometimes we tend to catastrophize, right? When we feel that, oh my God, if I have not been able to control it completely, that means now I'm going to gain so much weight, or my body is now really going to suffer. It is never any one small step which is going to lead to a catastrophic outcome, right? So it is always a stepwise process which builds up. So it is not black and white. Now, should statements are also something which I think are very problematic, that I should do this or I shouldn't do this, because should sort of boxes you up and induces a lot of guilt. So you can instead say that, okay, I can try and do this, and sometimes I can also not. Um, of course, there is a lot of, sometimes there's a lot of uh, feeling about what other people are thinking in terms of our food habits, whether they are judging us in some way. And we try and change it, or we feel embarrassed about the food habit and we don't consume then food in front of other people. But that's worse, because then we secretly start consuming food, or it makes us feel worse about the fact that, or so ashamed about having eaten, not eaten. So we develop a very negative relationship with food, which makes you more vulnerable to sort of go towards sugary substances. Labeling is again when we label ourselves as failures, or for example, like when we slip up, we may say that, oh, we haven't, I'm not good enough, I'm weak, I took this challenge, I'm not being able to do it. But like I was saying, that it is never an all or none process. So it is one step at a time. Some days will be good, some days will not be that great, but doesn't mean that all progress is lost. So effectively, what is very important in terms of any habit that we may want to change or look into is to look at what were the preceding factors. That before I consumed something, what was I feeling, what was I thinking, what was I doing that led me to either eat or not eat, right? And then what was the consequence? If I ate, did I feel good? How long did I feel good for? Did I feel recharged? How long did I feel recharged for? And if I didn't eat, then after a point, did I substitute it with some alternate behaviors? So ABC of any kind of sugar consumption is very important. For example, some things that may precede your sugar craving is when you don't sleep well, or you are overwhelmed at work, or you feel like some conflict with family members, any interpersonal relationships, external situations that seem very out of control. Then if you fast for too long, sometimes that has an issue. Like Dr. Anjali was also saying, when you haven't had enough water, that can show up as a craving. When you're anxious or worried, or you've eaten too much, or there isn't any space in life where, life is exciting, or there is something you're looking forward to. So then sugar becomes a more, uh, coping mechanism that we tend to rely on. And sometimes just thinking like, oh, I did this today, I deserve to eat a dessert. Fine, once in a while, okay. But every time that you need to reward yourself may not have to be a dessert. It can be a great meal, but a healthy meal. It can be something else that you enjoy doing. It can be time with your family. It can be something that you haven't been able to do. It can be a trip. So it can be anything. But we tend to fall back on only one thing, because our mind knows that, okay, if I do this, I will feel good. But it doesn't think about the fact that I will feel good for a very short period of time. And after that, I will actually end up feeling worse. So, what can we do? Uh, Sometimes when we have cravings, we need to try and eat slowly, not too slowly, but also chew thoroughly, give yourself enough time, be mindful of what you're eating. Sometimes we're on the phone, we're watching TV, um, doesn't help, because we end up either eating too much, we're not mindful about what we've eaten. Sometimes we feel, kid, I know that I've had enough, but I will still feel like consuming a little bit more. So stop when you're done. How does your stomach feel? Being in touch with your body is very important. So your body will give you cues about, what am I feeling? Am I feeling like something sweet? Am I full? Am I still feeling like something sweet? How much have I had to drink? When was the last time that I tasted what I was eating? Sometimes even just thinking about food triggers it, or say we're very hungry and then we say, okay, we have to go grocery shopping or shopping for something. And then we enter Modern Bazaar or some other market. You will end up buying a lot more sugary, unhealthy things when you're hungry, because at that point you just need to feel fulfilled, right? So say also whenever you're eating, another thing that can be done is never eat from the bag or from the jar, right? So take some on your plate, move away from that space, and then sit and eat. And then tell your next time you have the craving and your body says, okay, maybe a little bit more, let me get, have the 10-minute rule. Say that 10 minute, let me wait. If I still feel the craving, then I would rethink it and maybe go get one more helping, but that's it. Decide, plan ahead for meals. Sometimes when you don't plan कि dinner में क्या है, lunch में क्या है, you come home and you're just कि what is available in the fridge, I'm starved, let's quickly order on Zomato. So plan ahead. So your eating needs to be purposeful and not reactive, right? Control and planning doesn't just mean कि क्या खाना है, it's also how much do I want to eat, where do I sit and I want to eat, right? And focus on any one task, like we will say. Even during the day, don't starve yourself. Okay, I'm going to not eat anything, go home, have dinner, I can lose weight, or I can control it like this. It will not work. So have in smaller, like your time gaps, but healthy meals, and don't starve yourself. Keep your kitchen stocked with some healthy food also, right? So that when you're there, it doesn't feel कि सिर्फ unhealthy चीजें हैं जो मेरे access में है. Sometimes to even know कि what is it that I'm eating, is it healthy, not healthy, where am I? It is a good idea to track it. So mostly those were the things, some of the very few things that you could do. It is important to look at your not only cue control, not only the smaller adjustments that you can make, but also restructure the way that you're thinking, because the way that your thoughts are coming to your mind, it affects the way that you're feeling, it affects the way that you're ultimately going towards sugary food, and that is a cycle, then that makes you feel worse. All right, I think that is all from my end. Thank you.